Hi, and welcome back to this Monday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. I am your host, Bryan Fischer. Welcome aboard the USS Focal Point. It is our patrol boat in which we patrol the choppy waters of America's public life, looking for the intersection, the coordinates where truth intersects with politics. Our commander is on the bridge. The scriptures serve as our map, Holy Spirit as a navigator, and I serve as your loyal, humble, and cheerful first mate. Now, by the way, we are a full-service talk radio program looking right here at a breaking story about Americans' favorite snack foods. Here's the top 10. Ritz crackers, which I'm not a Ritz crackers fan. Lay's, I'm kind of partial to Lay's potato chips. Doritos, Fritos is good. Orville Redenbacher, Wheat Thins, Tostitos, and my favorite Cheetos down in 8th place. Pringles 9th and Triscuit 10th. So if you want to, when you call in, if you want to tell our listening audience what your favorite snack is, my personal favorite is Cheetos, only ranked number 8 on the list. You are welcome to do so. Now, I was interviewed about a month ago by PBS, Lucky Severson from PBS, and that feature that he's done is now up on the PBS website. I don't know when that's going to air on their network, maybe over the course of this weekend. But we've got 2 excerpts from this PBS story. The opening segment is where Lucky Severson is interviewing me, and then after that, we'll play a second clip. I'll set that up, Rob, the second clip where I have a concluding statement. So here is Lucky Severson and his interview with me for PBS.
Bryan Fischer's program is on 125 radio stations and on television in 3 states. To say he represents the far right of the Christian right is probably not saying enough. But because he works for the American Family Association, a nonprofit organization, he has to be careful not to endorse or oppose a political candidate, although he's been known to push that line as far as he can.
We have a lawless president. This guy, ladies and gentlemen, he reminds me of a juvenile delinquent, is really what he reminds me of. He's like a street thug.
Fischer, a former pastor, has strong views on just about everything, especially the nonprofit statute known as 501c3 of the IRS tax code that exempts churches from income and property taxes and prohibits opposing or recommending political candidates.
Just my advice.
It's been said of you that you push the limit as far as you can, that you won't say go vote against Obama, but you come as close as you can.
Well, I'm just observing the bright line that the IRS has established. This is what the IRS has said. That's the bright line, and I observe that line.
Do you think that line is unfair?
Absolutely, and it's completely unconstitutional.
What I'm talking about there is the bright line that the IRS has established is that you are not allowed to endorse a candidate. And if a 501c3 organization like a pastor from a pulpit or somebody from the AFA were to explicitly endorse a candidate, and I've never done that. I've never told this listening audience who to vote for. I've never told this listening audience who to vote against. But if I were to come out today and say, I endorse Mitt Romney or I endorse Barack Obama, then our 501c3 status would be in jeopardy. As long as I talk about issues, as long as I talk about where candidates line up with the issues and how that compares to a biblical worldview, everything is fine, copacetic as far as the IRS. But as I said to Lucky Severson, that makes that restriction absolutely flatly unconstitutional because the First Amendment says very clearly that Congress shall make no law abridging the free exercise of religion. So when the IRS, which is a creation of Congress, acting in accordance with a congressional law that was passed in 1954, when the IRS says to a pastor or to any other nonprofit organization, here is what you can or cannot say from your pulpit or from behind your microphone, they are abridging freedom of speech and they are abridging the free exercise of religion. I mean, you cannot interfere any more with the free exercise of religion than having a government agency dictate to a pastor the content of his sermons. That is egregiously unconstitutional. And that's why the Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF, is trying to get the IRS to take a pastor to court because they are convinced that the IRS will lose, that the Supreme Court will find these restrictions completely unconstitutional. They've been trying to do this for years. There's between 1,000 and 2,000 pastors this year, Pulpit Freedom Sunday coming up on October 7th, and there are going to be well over 1,000 pastors all across the United States, and they're going to get up in their pulpits, and they are going to tell the truth about politics from a biblical standpoint, and they're willing to be sued by the IRS. In fact, they're hoping to get sued by the IRS, so this unconstitutional restriction can be challenged in court and can be removed. And I think the reason that the IRS has not taken any of these pastors to court, I mean, you've got pastors sending them manuscripts of their sermons, sending them tapes of their sermons where they clearly cross this line that the IRS said exists, and the IRS still won't take them on. I think they're afraid that they will lose, and that if they lose, then their leverage to suppress freedom of speech and the free exercise of religion, that will vanish in smoke. So they want to leave this puppy alone. Now here is the concluding quote from my interview with Lucky Severson. This has to do with the role of pastors and the pulpits in the quest for American liberty. Let's listen.
The movement at this point may be more symbolic than anything, but that doesn't diminish the conviction of those like Bryan Fischer, who see the law as an attack on their freedom of religion and speech.
There would be no United States of America if America's pastors had not had the freedom from their pulpits to declare the truth as they saw it. So I think a key part of reclaiming America's future is to turn our pastors loose so they're able to declare without any hesitation, boldly as they are prompted to do, the values that they find in the scriptures.
So that's airing on PBS. Maybe this weekend. It's up on their website. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's start with Tony in Columbus, Ohio. Tony, you're on Focal Point with Bryan Fischer. What's on your mind?
Yes, good afternoon, Brian. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing good, Tony. How are you?
Great. I sure hope you feel better.
No, thank you very much. That's kind of you.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment about the friendly fire issue here.
Yeah.
One of the things I see with this is, first off, the Bible tells us, it says we should be in this world. It first of all says the children of light are much dumber in essence than the children of darkness in this world, number one. But then it also tells us that we should be as wise as serpents while being as innocent as doves. And I think a lot of Christians are missing that. This whole friendly fire thing should have ended at the end of the primaries, because at that point, it was pretty much said and done. We had our choices during the primary, and we split the vote. That's essentially what we did. Even up until the final stages of the primary, we still had a conservative in there, but we kept on splitting the votes, and that's what happened. And we essentially have to live with our consequences. I mean, with the consequences of our results at this point. I mean, there's really nothing we can do about it. We should take a cue from the liberals. I mean, we see Gap and Joe out there. How many times have we had the media pile on him? How many times have we seen liberals pile on him? And we don't take lessons from their playbook, and we keep making the same mistakes. And my fear is we might end up losing this election for just that sheer stupidity of it, to be honest. Because, I mean, they stick together no matter what.
Yeah, well, that's true. And you look at the way they have defended Joe Biden, despite the numerous gaffes that he's made, want to put you all back in chains and all that kind of thing. You know, and so I agree with you, Tony. I think maybe the only difference between us might be the timing. And I agree with you. It's a matter of wisdom. You know, my sense was after the primary, once Mitt Romney had been selected, remember, we had his campaign advisor out there saying, look, this is the Etch-a-Sketch candidate. When the primary's over, you shake the Etch-a-Sketch machine and you drop a brand new plan, which was kind of, frightening, actually, to conservatives because he'd kind of won the primary campaigning as a conservative. And so it sounded like he was going to abandon that and just kind of go pell-mell to the center. So I felt like it was pretty important for conservatives at that point to still kind of hold his feet to the fire and try to keep him from going too far off reservation. But then a point comes, and maybe the only difference between us is really where you cross that line, where it kind of becomes counterproductive then, because then you start maybe discouraging the base, you start depressing turnout, people start thinking, what's the use? And so at some point, I think it becomes counterproductive to offer that constructive criticism as valid and maybe even as appropriate as it might be. Well, thanks, Tony. I appreciate that call very much. Let's go to Easy in Victoria, Texas. Easy, you're on Focal Point with Bryan Fischer. What's on your mind?
Bryan Fischer, I'm praying for you so you can talk.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
And I look at it this way. We're in a culture of death. We're under a black umbrella. And the thing is, we're under a back umbrella. We don't have the grace of God. And the thing is, this is how I feel, the way you've been talking. I've been hearing, listening to you for about 2 years. And you make some good points and issues that the way we can get by this is to fast in prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I suggest that all Christians get together and go to Mass. Fast every day. And the thing is, to get out and see.
Mm-hmm.
The grace of God is like the sun.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that we are 43 days out right now from the election. One of the standard fasting periods in the scriptures is 40 days, and Tony Perkins, I know, has called for 40 days of fasting and prayer. Regardless of which part of the Christian tradition you happen to be in, fasting is a part of that. And I would definitely encourage that. And Debbie and I, my wife and I, have talked about fasting for the last 30 days of the election cycle, maybe fasting a couple of meals a day in order to ask God for his will to be done on November 6th, because I think the stakes are just about that high. So I think that's a great word of appeal, Easy, that we all ought to consider doing some fasting and prayer for the sake of our country at this critical time of decision. All right. Thank you, Easy. Appreciate that very much. Let's grab one more phone call. Let's go to Luciana, Woodsbury, Pennsylvania. Luciana, got about 30 seconds. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call. I'm outside of Scranton, where Biden was born at. We need to vote for the Romney because Obama's toxic and we're going down the Titanic. And Scott is a liberal Democrat out of Massachusetts, Senator Scott. And we need to vote for him, even though he's pro-abortion and pro-homosexuality. Conservatives are being conflict because we have 90% of Democrats have been hijacked by Communist Socialist Party, and the Republican Party, 70% of them are cupcake Republicans.
All right. Well, listen, Luciana, I appreciate your call. Thank you for that. And, I've said this before, but you look at the difference between the two-party platforms, and those differences are not political. They're moral. One is pro-life, the other pro-abortion, one pro-marriage, the other pro-same-sex marriage. Those differences, not political, they're moral. Back in 2.